This is episode 15 with special guests Audra and Justin Wilford. Welcome to My Kid Cures Cancer. My name is Ryan Sternagel, former regular guy turned dadcologist, cancer coach, and health advocate. Each week we'll talk to a new expert on a particular aspect of beating cancer or human optimization to bring you one step closer on your path to true health. Thanks for spending some time with us today. Now let's dive into this valuable, life-saving information which you're not going to hear about in a mainstream hospital. Welcome to September, otherwise known as Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. Around here we like to call it Childhood Cancer Empowerment Month because what good does just being aware of something without any action behind it really do anyway? If you know anything about us, you know we're all about taking matters into our own hands, and so are today's guests, who I absolutely could not think of anyone better to get this month started with. Audra and Justin Wilford founded the MaxLove Project in 2011, just 3 months after their then 4-year-old son Max was diagnosed with brain cancer, a mixed-grade glioma. Following a difficult partial resection surgery and the start of 1.5 years of chemotherapy, the Wilfords decided to become full partners in Max's treatment, recovery, and survivorship. By consulting with researchers, doctors, and cancer families all over the world, they began to find out what they could do, in addition to the standard treatment, to improve Max's functioning, pain levels, energy, and future survivorship. Whole food nutrition, good sleep hygiene, kid-friendly physical activity, and stress management techniques like acupressure, massage, and breathing were just a few of the evidence-based practices that helped Max thrive through treatment and into survivorship. Today, the Wilfords direct the MaxLove Project with the mission to increase the quality of life and reduce health risks for all children fighting cancer in treatment and beyond. And it really was neat, as usually on this show, we're talking mostly in terms of adult cancer, and then I go back on mykidcurescancer.com and write the full summary article, and there is where I write how it applies to childhood cancer. But this interview actually was about integrative approaches to childhood cancer, and if you've tried to research this subject for yourself, you know there aren't a whole lot of people putting out this type of information online that can speak to this topic very well, so it really was a very rare treat. And with that in mind, if you are an adult interested in adult things, not to worry, just like the information usually crosses over quite nicely from adult to child, I promise you there are plenty of really good insights and inspiration in here for you as well. Audra and Justin talk about their experience with their son Max when he was diagnosed with brain cancer in 2011 and the integrative journey that's led to Max being the happy, thriving little boy he is today. We got into how that journey led to the journey of founding the MaxLove Project and how a simple idea to send night lights to kids going through cancer treatment turned into an organization that has helped thousands of kids not only survive cancer, but to thrive through it. Audra and Justin talk about the culinary medicine program they will soon be rolling out in hospitals across the country that is based on their long-running Fierce Foods Academy and the guiding principles behind what it means to eat an anti-cancer diet. And we got into Audra and Justin's approach to evidence-based medicine and how to use it, which differs ever so slightly from the conventional view, but is much closer to ours and, in my opinion, much more helpful. We talked about exactly how they do feel about conventional treatments in childhood cancer and what they'd like to see change, along with resources for just getting started going down this path, and about everything to do with mindset when it comes to beginning to make beneficial changes in your life that are going to help stack the deck and tilt the odds in your kid's favor of living a long and healthy life. Lastly, the thing I am absolutely most excited about is what they are doing with their Ohana project, where they are actually taking groups of children with cancer and doing all sorts of integrative interventions and healthy lifestyle changes and documenting the whole thing and publishing the results in an actual medical journal. I've been wishing someone would do something like this for a long time, and I'm so grateful to Audra and Justin for actually doing it. That being said, we are sure glad you stopped by My Kid Cures Cancer, where it is our goal to bring all sides of the discussion on how to heal cancer and be truly healthy to the same table to give you one place to tune into for the most well-rounded perspective possible. This is a show for people going through cancer, by people going through cancer, inspired by my wife Teddy and I's experience with childhood cancer, bringing our son Ryder back from a stage 4 cancer diagnosis to the happy, healthy little boy he is today. If you aren't dealing with cancer in your family and want to keep it that way, I imagine this show will be very helpful for you as well. We'll get to Audra and Justin in just a minute, but a few things to go over first, starting with the muy importante disclaimer that, of course, the information you hear on this show is for informational purposes only and is not intended to be a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Now, I have one thing to announce that we are very, very excited about. Like I said in the beginning, we are taking September Childhood Cancer Awareness Month and flipping the script to Childhood Cancer Empowerment Month, because really we don't talk about it all the time, but our mission here is to reverse and prevent as many cases of childhood cancer as we can. One of the things we talk about in the interview you're about to hear is your domain. Sometimes it seems like we don't have control over everything that happens to us in the hospital, and that's because we don't. We only have the ability to control how we respond to it. But what you do have control over is a whole lot of things outside of it. And right at the top of that list, in our opinion, is your home environment. As for most of us, that's where we spend the absolute most time. So with that in mind, ask yourself this question: is your home harming or healing you and your children? I repeat, is your home harming or healing you and your children? If you follow us on Facebook or YouTube, you know we've put an enormous amount of time over the last few years into making sure every aspect of our living environment is as absolutely pristine, and by pristine, I mean non-toxic and non-pathogenic as it can be, from the air we breathe, to the water we drink and bathe in, to the surfaces we touch, to what our food touches before it goes into our mouths, to the energy we take in or lack thereof, and so on. So, speaking of time and energy, I am happy to let you know that we have invested a lot of it recently into compiling everything you need to address in your home to turn it into a healing home into one master checklist. This thing is incredible. We're really proud of it, and it basically walks you through all the categories and individual items within them you need to be thinking about to first remove all the obstacles to healing, all the bad stuff that is in our homes unless we're very intentional about it like this, and then second, supercharge your living space to where it is not only not harming you, but it is actually healing you 24 hours a day. I am not kidding when I say I am pretty sure this is the most useful and valuable thing we have ever created, and very proud to say that it's absolutely free to you. All you need to do is head over to mykidcurescancer.com/healing-home. Let us know your email, and we will send it right over. We really, really want to get this into as many homes as we can to start taking very meaningful action in preventing and reversing childhood cancer, and we really hope your home is one of them. Again, mykidcurescancer.com/healing-home is where to get it. All right, with that, strap in for an incredible interview we are very happy to bring you on the first episode of Childhood Cancer Empowerment Month with Audra and Justin Wilford of the MaxLove Project. Welcome back, everyone, to the My Kid Cures Cancer podcast. We have with us Justin and Audra Wilford, who I'm very excited to get to talk to. Like I was just telling you guys off air, we stumbled into you guys maybe 2-3 weeks post diagnosis, and have been loving everything you've been doing ever since. And thank you for everything you're doing. And I'll stop talking for a minute. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us on.
So much for having us. This is awesome. I was telling Justin, we don't really do things like, we're not asked, but I mean, we don't produce anything like this. We don't talk to people kind of in video very much. We're pretty old school that way. We write a lot, but this is such a great opportunity to be able to reach out via Skype face to face and have a great conversation. And hopefully, you have a great audience to spread the conversation further. So it's an awesome opportunity.
Yeah, well, no, we've been trying to get more and more into just making videos and stuff, in addition to these interviews, just on a regular basis, just about all the stuff we do, because I think it's very good for people to see that it's this healthy lifestyle and everything that we do it's a doable thing. So as I'm really excited to get to pick your guys' brains about, because especially as it applies to applying healthy things to children, and especially children going through cancer, I feel like a lot of people just don't think it's possible, or there's not a whole lot of good guidance out there for ways to do it, because, you know, people like the three of us, you know, don't they're not proliferating online, I guess you could say. So yeah, really excited to get to pick your guys' brains on just, you know, how you've gone about applying everything to your son Max, and everything you've been, you know, helping a whole ton of parents with along the way. So that is I'm excited. That being said, do you want to just, you know, tell us a little bit about your backstory? How, you know, what have you been going through with Max? Where did the MaxLove Project come from? Where are you at today? All that good stuff.
Yeah. We'll start with Max's story. Max was diagnosed August 5th, 2011, so almost exactly 6 years ago. He was 4.5, and he was diagnosed with a mixed grade brainstem glioma that had grown out of his brainstem. It filled this area called the fourth ventricle and then grew into his cerebellum. So he was taken by ambulance to a larger hospital for, it was an emergent case. He needed emergency brain surgery. His brain was hemorrhaging. And he went right into surgery that next morning and came out. He was intubated for a number of days. And our neurosurgeon came to us, I think it was 2 days later, and he said, you know, listen, had you come to us 30 days after this, there's absolutely nothing that we could do at all. Nothing. Wow. But we're going to try now. We're going to try. But at some point, our efforts to really focus on quantity of life are going to compromise his quality of life. And we need to stop at that point. We just need to stop. And he was talking about oncology. And what an amazing gift that we have this neurosurgeon who really sees the bigger picture, and his focus is on quality of life anyway. But with our son, the thought was that treatment may not be able to do much, but he knew that at some point it would compromise his quality of life. So just let's keep this in mind. Let's make this agreement. That's what we're going to focus on. And what I heard was, sweet. He's saying there's something we can do. This is fantastic. You know, I'm going to leave feeling empowered. What can we do? And a good friend of ours gave us the book Anti-Cancer, A New Way of Life. Did you ever read that book? Dr. Servan Schreiber?
I haven't read that one, which I don't come across a lot of cancer books. I don't even ring a bell to me, but I'll have to check it out.
Oh, it's a great book. It's a beautiful memoir of this man who actually brought Doctors Without Borders to the U.S. And he's a neuroscientist or a neurosurgeon. I don't remember. Anyway, he diagnosed himself during a study with a brain tumor.
That is ringing a bell, yeah.
Yeah. He then went back to his normal life, stressed out, eating McDonald's, typical doctor. And his doctor said, just go back to normal. And he then faced a pretty nasty recurrence. And at that point said, it can't be the case that I should just go back to normal. I've got to be able to do things differently. And so he actually cites some pretty amazing research in the space of integrative medicine. It's a really great introduction to a very moderate place when it comes to integrative medicine and diet, you know, looking at, omega-3, the higher omega-3s in a pastured, product, in a pastured egg, for example, lowering your sugar intake, just a really, good moderate approach to food, but also the lifestyle changes that come with minimizing stress, things, mindfulness, things like that. He was really ahead of his time.
Yeah, the approach, his anti-cancer approach was about how can you structure your life in an anti-cancer sort of way? And it wasn't any silver bullet. And he recognized that this is not, the one thing that's going to, cure cancer, but how can you, have a whole lifestyle that is anti-cancer. So physical activity and healthy relationships and things like that. So I think reading that book at the very beginning got us thinking in a kind of broader way that, there's no silver bullet. We're not going to find that one special herb. We're not going to find that one special thing. And that it really is this broader complementary approach. And I think that also made us more at ease with going down the conventional route of saying, we're going to do what the experts tell us to do. But on top of that, we are going to try to do every other anti-cancer thing that we can find out there that's not going to, contradict the conventional approaches. So, we did find that there were some things that we could do that would make the chemo less effective. And so we said, okay, well, we don't want to do those things. But it did get us thinking in this kind of broader, more complementary sort of way.
Yeah. So at this point, we actually had a really hard time with getting Max's diagnosis. He has a really unusual kind of brain tumor, and we've had many, many second opinions. And so he was in the hospital initially for about 4 weeks, and he left not being able to walk in diapers again as a 4.5-year-old. So he had left side ataxia. I mean, it was a really difficult physical situation for him, for his recovery. And so we left the hospital at that point, going into, choosing to go into chemotherapy. And at this time, we had a broader community that had opened up to us, not of other cancer parents, which is all we wanted, was to meet other people going through what we were going through. We weren't allowed to really just be connected with anyone because of HIPAA, whatever other reason. So all we wanted was to connect with another cancer family. And yet we have this entire community outside emailing us with every alternative medicine, Amazon fruit that kills cancer with chemotherapy, and then the conventional side saying, don't trust your doctor, go see another doctor, and so all of this vitriol and challenge and are you killing your child by doing anything that you're choosing, right? Anything between the conventional and the alternative worlds. And we made that choice to say, we're going to go with the best evidence we can find in our space of comfort to help our child. And that's it. Where's the evidence? The evidence shows that we can weigh this chemotherapy against this one, and this has less risk. This may have a greater reward for this. We can look at the data on that chemotherapy. We can look at the data on this nutritional intervention, so on and so forth. And so the first thing we did was we asked for a dietitian to be on our care team. And the response was, for what?
Sounds about right. Yeah.
Your child's not presenting with a clinical need, right? Like, well, we'd like to not get there, We'd like to have some support.
Oh, yeah. And just, the question we had is, well, our child has cancer now. We should probably eat in a different way than we ate before.
How do I get kale in them? Like, what, what do I need?
Why?
Shake menu, and we were presented with this, it's the Ensure Nesquik ice cream. And I just knew, like, this can't be. I didn't know anything at the time, but I knew that this can't be good. Now, I am a chef in training. And we've got a researcher here who was in the med libraries the whole time, so we pulled all of this together, and I started cooking for Max at home. Anything, you just started digging in, right? And at that point,
the first thing that we did, we not knowing anything else, I had read a Gary Taubes article a couple months before Max was diagnosed, and it was about sugar and just how sugar is bad. And so
Robert Lustig.
We didn't know. So that's where everything began nutritionally was, I don't know what else we're going to do. We're just going to cut out all the sugar.
Remove added refined sugars. Just remove those. And so I went down a rabbit hole of experimenting, cooking, and learning at the same time, right? And so we learned so much. I was like, agave is great. Agave is not great. Like learning about the, glycemic index and experimenting with foods, throwing things out. Meanwhile, our medical team said, listen, if he loses any weight coming in here on chemo, eating those peppers and cucumbers and vegan cookies you make him, then you're done. You can't do this anymore. You just can't do it anymore. Can't lose any weight. So he didn't lose weight. We took him to see Ruth McCarty here in Orange County, is our traditional Chinese medicine specialist. She's also our neurosurgeon's wife. He went for acupuncture twice a week before and after chemotherapy in the midst of his other 12 therapies and everything that he had to go to. And the kid he took a really great mushroom supplement. We had a list of other supplements we gave him. We had our routine. We had our bedtime. We had our physical activity. We're starting to put together this protocol. The kid was neutropenic fairly often, but never once got sick, never once broke a fever, never once went to the ER, never once went to the hospital for anything other than the routine labs and chemo. So he really thrived through that process in that way. However, we did experience disease progression, and that happened a number of times. And so it got to the point, we had gone off chemotherapy, went into a watchful waiting period just to see if things were going to stay stable. We wanted to give the kid a break from that. It was a year and a half of 2 different chemotherapy protocols. And what?
Well, I just don't want to get too far ahead of the story, because I just also want to add or just weave in MaxLove Project.
I was going to come back to that after.
Right.
Yeah. We
She's got a plan.
Story because two MaxLove Project and Max's stories intersect so deeply, but I just wanted to Max.
I know how it is trying to tell writer's story and My Kid Cures Cancer, and
it's hard. So by 2013, summer of 2013, we saw like a pretty massive, what they said, pretty extensive disease spread throughout the brainstem. And at this point, it was decided that among all the opinions that we got, we needed to do radiation. And he was 6 years old. And he needed a number of surgeries before we could do that. The kid needed a shunt. We did some other, we did there's a surgery you can do before doing a shunt to kind of see if that'll work. So anyway, we initiated the ketogenic diet after reading the research for a while. We initiated the ketogenic diet September of 2013, right?
Yeah. No. Yes.
Yeah. Justin and I went keto first. We then took the evidence to our oncologist and said, kindly, will you please look at this literature review that Justin had put together? And it was like a beautiful package of, some other parents had tried this, but they tried more of the yelling at the oncologist approach. It's not, we are both academics, and so we know kind of what that institutional structure is like. So we went, kindly, would you please take a look at this research review and see what you think? And
wish I had tried that one. Yeah.
We also, and I mean, we had, I had compiled a pretty large body of literature by that point in time, and we had mentioned it a few times to her that this is something that we would consider doing with Max if the tumor progressed. And then when it did progress, we came back and by that time we said, we are going to do the ketogenic diet. We would like you to be on board. And I think we had built up enough trust at that point in time that they didn't freak out. And our oncologist took the pile of studies that we gave her, and we didn't hear back for a couple weeks. We didn't know how this was going to go. And then we heard back from our case manager.
We had started anyway, but
But we heard back from the case manager after a couple of weeks, and she said, Dr. Shin is writing up a protocol to study the ketogenic diet at Chalk. She's all on board with Max going on the diet.
Now Max is number 1. So
nice.
We initiate the diet September 1. Okay, so we are facing progressing disease, right? And if you know anything about cancer, you know anything about progressing disease, it just doesn't just stop, as far as we know. I don't know of any cases where there's just like, no intervention and just stops, right? So we are now off treatment, essentially failed off the second protocol we were put on, which was Temodar, Avastin, and irinotecan, used in high-grade gliomas, treating the highest-grade portions of Max's tumors. So we're progressing disease. We initiate the diet in September. No other treatment because he's doing brain surgeries to get at his CSF issues. By the November scan, it's stable disease. Nothing has grown. And we do radiation, and so that's November 2013. We do radiation in April it ended in April, mid-March to mid-April of 2014. He had 6 weeks, his lifetime limit of radiation, and
he was in full ketosis the whole time.
Full ketosis the whole time, did not use anesthesia at all. The kid was 7 years old, and he just like zone out, fall asleep, pop back out. So no stress and no stress to his blood sugar from steroids, because our oncologist knew that he was fully keto, and she said, I'm not prescribing any steroids for him. I don't think that he's going to suffer from inflammation. I think he's going to be okay with radiation. I don't know of any other case like that. So no steroids. And what we saw after radiation was something called pseudoprogression. And so the areas of disease, like they look like they puff up, not just the edema, but it looks like it could be progressing even more. And then we saw a reduction and a regression in evidence of disease after that. So Max is on the ketogenic diet for 2014, 2015, right?
All the way through January 2016.
And we then relax a little bit. He loves cantaloupe. He loves sweet potatoes. Like the kid love popcorn. He's not even asking for like cotton candy, apples. Like he wants watermelon. I mean, that's what and sushi. He does have sashimi, but he wanted like full on sushi. But that's it. And so we relax a little bit to more of a low carb approach than a ketogenic approach. And we are about to go on to 6-month scans from there. And our neurosurgeon said, there's no way you can do that. This kid has a really atypical and unpredictable glioma. I know he's been doing great, but we need to do a scan now. You cannot go to 6 months.
So this is, so we had a scan in March of 2016. Everything looked good. We were going to go to a 6-month scan. And so instead, the neurosurgeon wanted to do a scan, which ended up being early July.
Yeah. Anyway, so we found new evidence of disease, a lesion in the pons of the brainstem in the radiation field. This is just not good. Yeah, that's not good. How in a number of months, all of a sudden you see the lights come back on in the disease there was just crazy to everyone and crazy to us. So we were presented with chemotherapies. We were presented by our neurosurgeon with a gamma knife option, which is a targeted radiation procedure. And there's risk to doing that on top of the radiation field. We can never do it in that spot again. But our thought was we could give this kid a port and continue to do all of our therapies. We did cannabis oil with radiation the first time, by the way. I didn't add that. We could go through all of that again, but for this stuff to even get to the brainstem, it's unlikely. We're going to kind of make his entire body sick and toxic to get to a lesion in the brainstem. It doesn't seem to make sense when we can optimize and maintain his quality of life with a 6-hour procedure, right? So we got approval to do gamma knife. We went full keto again, like full keto. We got the support of Quest Nutrition through their keto program. They actually, we took notes on his ketones and blood glucose numbers every day and notated all of those. They sent us snacks and additional foods to, help Max through that process. And so we went full on keto. We did the gamma knife procedure in October of 2016. And we just had our 9-month scans post that. And the results, they said, are like nothing they've ever seen. The actual area is completely resolved. There's no enhancement at all. You were supposed to see enhancement post gamma knife really like 14 to 16 months after. It's nothing. It looks like it's just completely like
normal
tissue. So Max is still keto, and he's 10, and he's thriving. He's at the fair today with buddies. We're playing baseball. He loves to sew. He loves crafts. He loves art. He's doing amazing. He does have evidence of disease, but it's all dim. And he is recovering physically still beautifully. He does have an IEP in school, but his cognitive functioning and recovery from those surgeries and that brain injury has been tremendous. Like beyond, we were told that he would never be able to we were told that any symbols, like letters and numbers, trying to remember those would be incredibly difficult for him. And he loves math. So that speaks to that initial focus on quality of life and never losing sight on that has provided this incredible quality of life for this child, and quantity as well, which is the part we didn't expect. That's the biggest thing no one, expected. I think Max to be here thriving today, which is incredible. So MaxLove Project story starts October 2011. Max had this nightlight. It was a turtle that projected stars on the ceiling. I got it for him because he came home and was so terrified of the dark. It's the only thing and there's this beautiful story that goes along with it where he identified the green stars as healing stars because when we were in the hospital, we identified green as his super power color. So we changed our narrative about cancer immediately. What do you say to your kid when you're in the ICU? He's calling it a hotel. Why am I here? Like, what do you, is there any help with what to say? Rarely. So all I could think of was, man, your brain is such an awesome place to be. There are these bad guys. They were good guys, but they kind of mutated into bad guys, and they built a fort. This ninja's going to come and take it out, and then we're going to heal. High five. Cool. How are we going to heal? Well, we have green superpowers, and they're going to help your good guys fight the bad guys. We're going to do it. Okay, great. So he goes home with this green super,
because of the veggies.
Veggies, exactly, anything green. So the green lights on the Twilight Turtle were his healing star. Wrote to the company. I said, I want to give these to other kids fighting cancer because in the hospital, there's nothing empowering. There's nothing they get to choose to do, right? And this is the one thing where you can put that light on and say, I want this right now. So would you help me get these? And they said, we'll give them to you. So that's a Cloud Beat company. It was amazing. So I got onto LegalZoom, started the nonprofit because I thought they would need a receipt for what. That was it. It was Max and I going to the UPS store, going to the hospital to deliver these things, and then sending them out to kids across the country who we would contact personally on Facebook and say, do you want one? And that's it. MaxLove Project was not at its inception founded to be what it is today. But what happened was we started to build this community of parents with these Twilight Turtles, right? And we started to hear, how is it that Max is doing so well? What do you do with this? Oh, you're cooking. What do you do with that? What is your opinion on food, right? And so in our community that we were building that we so desperately wanted because we had a very hard time meeting other families, we started hearing all of these health-related questions. And so we thought, we need to share what we're doing with Max because he's doing way better than anyone that ever thought he would. Let's share what we're doing. So MaxLove Project really grew from there. We started offering cooking classes. We started the online support group. We started just writing things down, like our
dietitian consultations.
But even before that, like our Fierce Foods guide was just us writing, like, okay, we're getting it, all these emails or Facebook messages. What do you do? How do you do this? Like, let's just write it down in a booklet and give it to people. So that's really how our journey began with MaxLove Project. And over the years, the transition's been crazy now.
Yeah,
in comparison.
It's
where we started.
It's always been a really organic process because anything that we found that helped Max, we would immediately hear from other parents like, this is exactly what we want too. And so we thought, okay, well, we were just constantly finding things that helped Max and then trying to find ways to get those out to other childhood cancer parents. So it's been a really organic process, and it has really led to MaxLove Project kind of being this weird amalgamation of a bunch of different things from, our broth bank to get bone broth to families, to the cooking classes, to the dietitian consultations, to the sleep lights, to funding acupuncture, and it's like all over. And so it's only been in the last year that we've really tried to tie this all together and to create one comprehensive program, which we'll maybe get to talk about in a little bit.
Yeah, so essentially our programs on the ground here became really apparent that we're really concerned with scalability. And at some point, how do we make a deep impact in this system? Because systemic change, one of the really, really big concerns for us going through Max's treatment were all of the other kids he was in treatment with at a hospital that, for us anyway, is a Medi-Cal hospital. In other words, families from across the region who are on the state insurance come to our hospital. So we know that Max is thriving because of our education levels, because what we brought to the table with our medical team. But the family next to us who's on a translator telephone with their doctor doesn't have the same access to what we have. And that's just not right. It's not right. We need to change the system so every child has full access to every tool that will help them thrive. Now, understanding that the hospital is structured for critical emergent care. Totally get it. It's not structured for lifestyle medicine. It's not structured for long-term care. But the reality for us now, I think we're starting to understand in the healthcare system is a continuum of care. The fact that so many of these kids are in there for 300 days out of the year, it is much more than critical emergent care. it is long-term care. So how do we start to push the needle in the system to enhance standard of care, to include integrative medicine? So as we started learning from our community of families and actually growing here locally with our own hospital, we started to see what we're doing here in Southern California as the research and development site for what we'd like to scale. So this is our feasibility studies are happening here on the ground. And I think that we got enough under our belt and the relationships developed enough here locally that we've been able to now pull everything together full circle. And we have 3 programs that are really our defining programs moving forward for MaxLove Project. The first one is a culinary medicine program. And our Fierce Foods Academy cooking classes that we've done here have been that feasibility R&D stuff going on here. How do we do this cooking classes for families, childhood cancer patients and survivors, the diverse needs? How do we scale that up and grow it with attention to all of this? Well, we had to experience it first. So we have a partnership with Chalk Children's Hospital, Willett Children's of Savannah, the Charlie Cart Project, makers of mobile teaching kitchens for schools actually, and the Massachusetts College of Art and Design in Boston to create a hospital-based culinary medicine program. And so we're going to be taking this mobile teaching kitchen, we're adapting it for use in the hospital. We will deploy it. We have our partnering hospitals to start. We're studying what we're doing, and we're going to then release this for hopefully partners across the country to bring culinary medicine into the hospital. The reason why we want to do that is the more you are comfortable cooking at home and have those skills, the better off you're going to be in incorporating any sort of dietary change into your child or your family's protocol. One of the biggest challenges we have is a lack of culinary literacy in our country, really, as we're doing a lot less cooking, right? So it's one of our main interventions. The second one is our Ohana project for integrative medicine. Do you want to?
Well, we can talk about that a little, I guess, later, because it's a big project, and I'm sure
I know we're
just kind of going on. So
I'm loving all of it. Yeah. Did you say CHOP Children's Hospital of
Children's Hospital of Orange County?
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes, we want to take a breather, and you can ask any of the follow-up questions because we just unloaded on you there.
No, that was all great, and I guess before we launch into the next project, I guess I'd love to hear more about what am I looking for? What did you call the dietary project you're rolling out in the hospitals?
Yeah, it's our culinary medicine program. So it's our Fierce Foods Academy adapted for the hospitals.
Yeah, I'd just love to hear more about the specifics of it. Like, what are the tenets of, what are you teaching people in diet? How are you teaching them to, apply that into their family life? All that good stuff. I'd just.
Yeah, so I'll just talk really broadly about the philosophy, and
Sure.
then Audra can talk more about the nuts and bolts. So we have what we call a Fierce Foods philosophy, and Fierce Foods is focused on quality of life and reducing long-term health risks. And so it's not about the ketogenic diet. It's not about any specific dietary strategy. It's focused on some very broad nutritional tenets. So one is whole foods. Focus on whole foods. Avoid processed foods. So this is stuff that like everybody can get around. And so on the one hand, from the perspective of a family dealing with active cancer, and they're interested in the ketogenic diet, these broader tenets might not be what they're immediately interested in, but what every family needs, whether or not they're doing a hardcore ketogenic diet or they're just looking for quality of life and long-term risk reduction, they need culinary skills, because regardless of which direction you go, if you don't feel comfortable in the kitchen, if you don't feel comfortable improvising with a recipe, you are going to be discouraged, and it's going to be very difficult. So the culinary medicine program is really about providing every family with the basic skills to get into the kitchen and then pursue whatever dietary strategy that fits their family and that fits their needs. So the Fierce Foods philosophy, it's about whole foods. It's about avoiding processed foods. It's about especially avoiding refined carbohydrates, so sugar and refined flours. But it is not a ketogenic or even low carb approach, because this could still include all the whole fruits, rice, sweet potatoes. So there's a lot of stuff that fully fits into the Fierce Foods philosophy. But we try to get families to focus on just whole foods, and then also think about what your great grandma ate. Let's just get back to ancestral foods. We don't need to go back to the paleo age. We can just go back 100 years or so, and we're going to find foods that are much healthier and much more important for the goals, for the health goals that we have. So those are the broad philosophies, and
yeah, and then we're able to target for the audience. And one of the cool things too is that when you take that general approach, and then you can start to target with really cool micronutrients and fierce foods that have certain medicinal properties. For a lot of us, learning why garlic is so powerful, for example, learning how to really use
leeks or
right. It's a really fun process of uncovering the power of food. For this hospital-based program, it's going to be really interesting, because we're really learning in our pilot how to do it. It's something that it's done at our hospital. I know many others that's craft, like food, I don't know, some sort of cooking classes that's crafts, right? And I've seen them with the English muffins and the ragu sauce on top and the cheese product, and the kids sit there and eat them raw. And it's just, it's, a childlike, project. And there are a small handful of hospitals that are offering any semblance of what we're talking about. So what our partnership with the Charlie Cart Project, they're amazing. If anyone wants to look them up, charliecart.org. They're based out of Berkeley, California, and they bring this teaching kitchen cart to schools that they invented with wonderful curriculum attached to it. And it's also a whole foods-based approach. So we're really synchronous. We're looking at the two major points of intervention in our society, schools and hospitals. And so we're taking leadership to adapt this to the hospital. And what that's going to be is super cool. It's this cart that you can push into a playroom, into a conference room, into a lobby. We're going to be tricking ours out with GoPro cameras so that we can actually produce a cooking class that can be broadcast to the television station in the hospital. We're looking at not just serving families with access to learning about how much fun it is to get in the kitchen with real whole foods, but physicians, nurses, and other clinicians. The goal really is to create a culture of health in the hospital where it's very much dominated by that culture of sickness, right? And also bringing some, fun to it. We have guest chefs who come in and work with us, but a lot of what we're challenging in adapting our program, or our challenges in adapting our program, which has been outside of the hospital. We work at out of various teaching kitchens in our area. We have monthly cooking classes, and some things we don't have to pay attention to are procurement of foods through food services. You're looking at sanitation rules. You're looking at a good number of opportunities to adapt to a hospital setting. But we're looking at how to remove the barriers to that so that we can deploy the intervention. And from there, the focus is on how to scale that intervention so every children's hospital across the country has access to it. I believe that things are very, very different than they were 6 years ago at our hospital and others. I think that there is a real interest in food as medicine, either genuinely or simply because the customer wants it, right? It may not be too genuine, but we're all asking for it. And that really speaks to parent and patient power. We really, really believe that this is an aside, but it is a powerful part of the previous healthcare reform that not a lot of people are aware of, or patient-reported outcomes. And that's a whole nother conversation. But it speaks to the power of that we have to report our healthcare outcomes that actually relate to how hospitals are reimbursed. So they're listening to us now more than ever. It's really a powerful time. So if we have any other parents, patients, listening to the podcast, one of the best things that you can do is bring your feedback to the hospital directly, write to your CEO, whoever you can get a hold of, and say, I believe in food as medicine. I would love to see more of that in our space. We should have food to thrive in the hospital.
And one other thing, one other point for parents as well is to focus on quality of life when they talk with their medical team, or they talk to hospital administrators, or they're giving feedback. Because when you start to talk about, I want to use food to fight cancer, I want to use food for treatment efficacy. All right, so that gets into a tricky ground, right? With doctors and hospital administrators and conventional researchers. Yeah. So, but in the area of quality of life, this is something that everybody can get on board with. Yes, most everyone believes that eating better is going to make you feel better, and that is a really powerful, direct way to push for these goals that may also include fighting cancer and treatment efficacy. But we don't need to. But we don't. Yeah, we don't need to use those terms. Yeah.
That's
for example, you probably, I don't know if you've had a lot of conversation about cannabis on the program, but our hospital is actually cannabis friendly now. California is much more cannabis friendly. And our doctors want to know that we want to incorporate it in the protocol. But the best argument for it is quality of life, not that I'm sure that this has, this is a good substitute for chemotherapy, not a good thing to mention to your medical team, or that I do believe this impacts, treatment efficacy. Probably don't want to talk about that either. Just focus on, I'm looking for optimal quality of life for my child. I want to make sure that A, B, C, D is in place. For us, we cited neuroprotection during radiation. And so there's pretty powerful evidence that CBD oil, especially, is super neuroprotective. So that was a part of our strategy. So looking at your case strategically, as opposed to, kind of like almost like an ideology sort of thing, where you're like, this is my plan, and you must understand why I want to do it. Just learn, think strategically how you can work with your team on getting approval for what you need, making sure that no one's standing in your way.
I like to quote Training Day every once in a while. It's like you're playing chess, not checkers now.
Right.
Oh, that's a solid tweak there. Just going after the quality of life instead of this is the cure or whatever. No, I'm gonna have to start remembering to tell people to use that terminology. That's great.
We've learned all about the red flags. Like, we can see the red flag go up, for years when we would, have these discussions.
And I think Audra and I have the advantage of working in higher education at universities for years before Max was diagnosed. And so we had a healthy respect for all of the bureaucratic nonsense that
we were patient.
That doctors, nurses, therapists, everybody has to get along with. And so even if you had a doctor who felt 100% that, whatever dietary thing or whatever supplements, that you want to do, even if they felt 100%, they have to work within a very strict bureaucratic structure. And then, of course, they've been doing this for decades. And so you just have to kind of be patient. You have to use the right terms, and you kind of have to lead them slowly in the direction that you want to go.
Yeah. I like it. And well, so that being said, you guys are really big on evidence-based, evidence-based medicine, evidence-based food, or whatever you want to call it. I mean, I'd love to hear, a little more about the evidence you're looking at, and how you are presenting it when when it's appropriate.
Yeah, so in the broader medical sciences, evidence-based medicine has a slightly different meaning than what we mean by it. For in the health sciences, it's about hardcore randomized control trials, has gold standard evidence, and then anything that cannot reach this gold standard then has to be rejected. And that's not our approach, because that would leave very few things,
Right.
available. Our approach is that we need to weigh everything with costs and benefits, and we need to look at all of the evidence that is possibly out there in order to weigh the costs and the benefits. And so a conventional hardcore evidence-based researcher would say, well, the ketogenic diet, I mean, there are no randomized control trials. There are only a few phase 1 human studies. Most of the evidence is in mice and petri dishes. Like, this is just not going to cut it. So you just can't do it. But from our approach, we need to look at the entire body of evidence and weigh the costs and the benefits. And so what are the costs? Well, it is a relatively strict diet, so there will be some stress in eating in a different way. All right, so there's maybe an emotional cost. We know that for some kids, there may be some electrolyte imbalances, and there may be some issues that you need to really watch their blood work for. Okay, then make sure a registered dietitian follows the blood work along with the doctor, especially in the first 3 months. What are some of the other issues? Well, there's a potential for decreased linear growth. And so while on the ketogenic diet, the child might not grow as fast. Okay, well, I think most parents facing a life-threatening cancer would trade a couple inches off their kid for having their kid around. And that was certainly the cost-benefit analysis that we did. So when you look at the actual cost, I mean, I'm sure, you could find some other small risks, when you look at, because one of the great things about the ketogenic diet is that it's been examined for several decades now very closely in the world of epilepsy. And so we know from neurology, we know a lot about the ketogenic diet for kids and for kids with serious health problems. So we know that there's a 4% chance of this and a 5% chance of that. And so if you have an experienced ketogenic dietitian following the blood work along with your oncologist, I think the costs are extremely low. And now we can go over and we can look at the potential benefits. Well, if the potential benefits are decreasing tumor size, of increasing the efficacy of chemotherapy and radiation, then it's like, wow, well, now we have this really clear cost benefit. But of course, if you are an ALL family, so there's not a lot of research in blood cancers with the ketogenic diet. If you're an ALL family and you're going through first-line primary treatment, which has a very high success rate, then we would say no, the costs and the benefits, suggest that you shouldn't do the ketogenic diet, because you are looking primarily at a lot of emotional hardship of changing the family's diet, of having to make all these changes when we really don't know at all if this is going to make a lick of difference, because it very well could be that you go through conventional primary treatment and you'll be like one of the 90% of the kids who,
that is to say, though, at that
good.
point, you do recommend the evidence in a carbohydrate conscious approach where
right.
It's not between like a standard American diet and ketogenic. It is
right. So yeah, it's not just like you do keto or you just feed your kid Twinkies, right? And so that's where the fierce foods philosophy comes in, and that's where our approach to survivorship, quality of life, long-term risk reduction comes in. The evidence is very clear that processed foods contribute to all of the high risks that childhood cancer survivors already face, whether it's diabetes, heart disease, kidney disease, the secondary cancers. So I think it's very clear that you can take a strict whole foods approach, and without going keto, and that it stacks the deck in your child's favor to beat the odds, because the odds are for childhood cancer survivors that by the time they're 45 years old, right, 85% of them are going to be dealing with a chronic health condition. 95%, or I'm sorry, I have that. 95% will be dealing with a chronic health condition. 85% will be dealing with a life-threatening health condition. So,
and what else in sort of mitigating the risks, or as we put it, changing the odds, is significant in terms of, again, the evidence-based, wellness approach that we have. Again, so Justin just cited that it's not our base of evidence that we pull from is any kind of research that we can find. We like the peer-reviewed journal articles, studies like that. It doesn't have to be the double-blind. Do you want to go into that a little bit, and then the integrative medicine part of it beyond Fierce Foods?
Yeah. So, in our view, evidence is anything that has been peer-reviewed, and so it can be anything from petri dish evidence that shows maybe curcumin has all these anti-cancer properties in a petri dish. So we can use that sort of evidence all the way up to big epidemiology studies. Although honestly, from my point of view, the big epidemiology studies are I think are less valuable even than the petri dish studies. But you take it all as a totality, and then you weigh the costs and the benefits. So acupuncture is another one. Now, in the conventional evidence-based medicine world, acupuncture is garbage, right? It's just total woo-woo nonsense. Because there have not been large randomized control trials that have well-developed placebos, that can show beyond a shadow of a doubt that acupuncture is superior for any particular medical condition. But there's a lot of evidence that does not reach the gold standard, but that shows that acupuncture is effective for nausea, for pain, for neuropathy, for fatigue, and so the evidence suggests that it could be very effective for these things. And now you look,
and this is Western evidence, right, as well.
And now you look on the cost side. All right, so what are the costs? What are the risks? It's the cost. If you have to pay for the acupuncture, right, then the cost would be the actual money that you have to pay. There are no known risks to receiving acupuncture from a licensed acupuncture therapist. And so the cost benefit is so clear. It's like, and I'll say this as well. There is an emerging, really over the last decade or so, body of very good Western scientific, Harvard, Johns Hopkins research that shows that placebos are actually really powerful medicines in themselves.
Something to take note of, yeah.
Yeah, so if the only thing that is occurring in acupuncture is the placebo effect, then more for it. Go for it, Yeah. So so our approach with this again is we want to take the whole body of evidence that's out there and then weigh the costs and the benefits. So we can look at, on the flip side, something like lay trial or apricot kernels. That this has been around since the early 1970s as a potential anti-cancer therapy, but there's evidence that at high doses it can be really dangerous thing. So you weigh the costs and the benefits.
Yeah, it's active ingredient.
So you weigh the costs and the benefits. You say, well, the evidence that it could actually fight cancer is very, very, very mixed. And then on the other side, there's this potential for real danger if you consume it in the wrong way or at high doses. So we suggest families steer clear, but of course, we send them links to, competing takes on this, and families can weigh the cost and the benefit for themselves. But that's one that we've said the costs are not worth the potential benefit. Then you compare that to something like curcumin, which Max takes every single day, and the costs and the benefits are clear. It's like, oh my gosh, like this is a really powerful natural biochemical that has been used in traditional medicine for thousands of years. There's evidence in Petri dish and mouse studies that it could fight cancer. Really no contraindications, so we're just going to do it. So again, it's trying to weigh everything that we can see out there, weigh the costs and the benefits. And the other thing I'll say about evidence-based medicine from a conventional perspective is that it's really easy when you're an academic researcher to say, well, it doesn't meet the gold standard, so you shouldn't do it. And it's really easy when you're not the one facing disease, facing life-threatening, diseases. And so for us, these are all things that you have to weigh within the context of your situation.
Yeah, one of the parents I'm currently talking to just had that talk with her oncologist that, she wants to do all this stuff, and they were poo-pooing it, but they were also telling her that there's nothing that they can do. And she said, well, what if it was your kid? And they said, well, I guess if it was my kid, I'd be doing all the same stuff you're doing. So
Exactly right. If there's nothing that the conventional world can, give you, then
give me evidence against it. You want to know my evidence for it? I'd like to know your evidence against it. And that's something that was interesting for us with going keto with Max. We were first presented with, there's a 2% chance of kidney stones.
No. They thought the chance of kidney stones were much higher. Oh. So it turned out when we first introduced the ketogenic diet to our oncology team, they said, there are risks, and then when we actually went into the epilepsy literature and we're like, oh, you mean that, 4% risk of kidney stones? You mean that 5% risk of
Brazil nut is nil, because of the selenium, right?
Yeah, so right. So Max could have micronutrient deficiencies on such a strict diet. And it's then we'll just take one of the multivitamins that the epilepsy kids get. It's, these are not big deals.
And what about the risk of kidney failure on that chemotherapy, right? And the risk of nutrient malabsorption because the gut isn't working anymore on those prophylactic antibiotics that he's getting constantly that he doesn't need on the ketogenic diet.
But I will say in defense of our oncology team, because we love them dearly, is that they hadn't really been approached about the ketogenic diet before. And so in their mind, this is a very severe thing. And, they might have heard a few things. Once they actually started to look into it, then they were on board. I think it's important too, when you're proposing a complementary approach to your medical team, to understand the some of those risks and present both to the team. These are the potential benefits we're looking at. We understand that there are these risks, but we're okay with that in service of the greater whole or whatever it may be. I think it's refreshing and helpful to hear that you're not just sort of religiously almost attached to some idea that you got from the internet, that you only heard the potential benefits of, that you've done your research, you understand both sides of it. I think it's compelling when making the argument. The other thing that we talk with families about is never bring in a printout from a blog website
or a green or whatever kind of thing. Bring in the best original source you can possibly find.
It's tough because it does require a little bit of information competency, would say, to get onto Google Scholar or PubMed and to really find the original
to
primary research. But that's the type of research that's going to be convincing to your oncology team. I will add one more thing in here that, in regard to evidence, that that isn't always popular with some parents in the alternative medicine world. But if we're going to really be if we're really going to be committed to going down an evidence-based route, then we have to acknowledge that chemotherapy and radiation are highly effective, and that if your child is facing a disease like ALL, that has a very high success rate with conventional treatments, then I think it's important that you really you take in the expertise and all of the research that has been done on that. That doesn't mean that you need to ignore all of the other alternative or complementary approaches, because you can still do all that stuff. And I would say, if you have a doctor or an oncology team that says, no, we don't want you to do a single supplement, we don't want you to do acupuncture, we don't want you to, do anything with your diet, if they just push back against all that stuff, then I would say, if it's within your means, find a new team, find a new doctor, because you should definitely have a doctor that is willing to work with you. But if your child has a really good prognosis, then go with the evidence, go with the conventional approach, but then add in all of the other integrative complementary approaches that you can, because again, for us, it's not just about beating the cancer, it's about lifelong survivorship. And the research shows that kids who have to go through chemotherapy and radiation later on in their lives, they face a lot of health problems, and that there are things that we can do early on to mitigate a lot of these.
Can I add to that too, along with there are stages to treatment of disease, right? Like you guys saw personally with utilizing chemotherapy for a while and then deciding that you're at a point of stability where you're going to focus on thrivership. You don't need to do that treatment course anymore. We have two Wilms tumor families here with recurrent disease who've done something kind of similar, where they pursued treatment at a critical state of disease progression and were able to make their way using, at that point, their knowledge and intuition and their knowledge of the space in their child to make a different decision. And they now have, these two both have thriving kids in a space that they've carved out on their own. And so I totally believe that is possible too. But usually when a child is diagnosed with cancer, you're usually at a grade 4, stage 4, whatever it may be. Very often, very rarely are we found at an early enough stage of disease where we can reverse with our complementary medicine. Is usually it's balancing therapies. It's making that anti-cancer environment. And you can, from what we know, reverse disease at early stages this way. It's much less probable at a grade 4, stage 4 space, right? So I think another point too, with somebody who might be really, really focused on not utilizing standard of care, is to consider that there are different points of intervention in this disease process. It is a marathon, it is not a sprint, and you may need to engage in critical care, to the point that it best, and you will learn along the way, and you will find there's going to be ebbs and flows. We have turned down chemotherapy now multiple times in favor of a different type of care option, and in favor of even a different type of standard of care, and we're able to make that choice.
Yeah, but that's because we are faced with a tumor that is unlikely to respond to the chemotherapy. So
what I'm saying though is that, like, adding some nuance to that. I think sometimes when we jump in, we think we have to make every decision right now forevermore, and it's only going to be this way always. It's not. It's going to change in a month. It's going to change in 2. It's going to change in 2 years, and to look at what's needed right now at this stage in really addressing the disease and then moving forward from there. And I think that's what you guys did in many ways, didn't you? So, I think there's a place for all this.
Yeah, that's, being pretty deeply ingrained in the alternative side of things now, I'm trying to even reverse educate a lot of the educators, if you want to call them that, on in that space, because that whole, I don't know if it's true or not. I haven't had time to really dig into it, but that study that says that chemotherapy is 2% effective, or whatever it is, that the alternative natural folks like to throw around. And if that's true for the adults,
types of therapy, so I don't know if that would. I would study that.
Would love to see that.
I've
never seen that.
Yeah, it's a pretty well quoted, at least study. I think it was out of Australia, but someone in the natural community got hold of it, and now they all like to talk about that. And whether it's true or not, I haven't really dug into it, but I know it's not. That's just looking at adults. It's not looking at kids.
Well, and one thing with chemotherapies is that these protocols are based on. We were talking with our neurosurgeon about the other day. These studies are based on basically. In his word, I'm not quoting him, but he was saying that when you really look at oncology, you are trying to kill the disease before you kill the human being, right? And I mean, these are yes, very, very toxic therapies. For some, and for many, people, they need to engage in that at some point, right? And so part of where we're at is in the space between everyone of acknowledging efficacy and evidence, all the way around, and in the kind of addressing of disease for so many people, there's good evidence that radiation in an intrinsic brain tumor is a effective therapy, especially, of course, when combined with the ketogenic diet. And so any sort of knee-jerk reaction is what we try to work with. We try to work with informed, reactions. So it's great. If you have a plan and a protocol and an understanding and all that, this is what you want to do. That's fantastic. But an automatic reaction against standard of care or an automatic reaction against alternative therapies is where we would like to challenge both of those sides, right? There should be no automatic reaction. We're looking for informed decisions. And how do you do that, right?
And I would just like to add for if any ALL parents are watching this, or listening, that before the invention of chemotherapy, leukemia was you were going to die. I mean, the survival rates were just extremely, extremely low. And then we see from the first chemotherapy, I believe in the 1940s. I don't have my dates exactly correct on this, but we see survival rates at like 40%, 50%. But as different chemotherapies are invented, as different protocols are refined, and as more research is done, the survival just goes up and up and up and up. And so now, with a straight ALL diagnosis, there are a bunch of different subtypes, but your chance of 5-year survival is now over 90%. And so this is all because of chemotherapy. So now there might, so I don't know about that particular study, but I would really encourage parents whose child has something like an ALL diagnosis, that they really owe it to their child to go the conventional route because the success rates are so high. Now there are other cases where the success rates are not high, and some other things can be explored, but yeah, I think we need to have a healthy respect that there's been a lot of really smart, really hardworking doctors and researchers who've been doing a lot of work over the last
on this for a second.
Years.
So these protocols were developed in an environment of the standard American diet, right? In an environment of kind of our current lifestyle, very much, right? So imagine if these protocols could be developed in a different way. I mean, imagine if we can have more advanced genome information with a patient. Imagine if we could understand the human being with may have gene mutations that lead to us not being able to methylate B12, we may have a number of things going on with nutrition malabsorption, things that lead to imbalance in the body that create a favorable environment for cancer. So imagine if we could learn about the patient, and imagine if we could then develop these protocols to deploy chemotherapy as needed, really as needed, and addressing the point of disease at the point in time when we need to. These protocols are developed 3 years of chemotherapy for ALL, right? Because of how the studies are constructed, over time. There's so much medicine given to err on the side of caution in service of a protocol, right? What if we could change that somehow? What if you could look at the health and well-being of a patient in terms of impacting how we may administer some of these medications, and if we would administer some of these medications? I mean, I think it would be incredible. We would love to see a minimization of the treatment toxicity, absolutely. And so the other side of what Justin is saying is that we do believe that you can mitigate the risks and that you can change the odds. In our case, we saw that we use a lower dose chemotherapy than we think we had to. We probably could have been advised to go into a different type of protocol. And I think it helped our son tremendously. So what if we could carve out a space in the future of cancer treatment where we don't almost kill the patient and where we could judiciously use as needed? That's a place that I know we'd like to go, and we believe that integrative medicine can completely impact that and change the way that we treat cancer. So even though we have respect for standard of care in terms of saving lives today, we also understand that the standard of care needs to change as well.
Yeah. No, well, I love everything you guys are doing, and that message of, hey, let's try to get the best of both worlds here, or at least the best we can. I don't want you to be prescriptive by any means, but for a family just fresh off of a childhood cancer diagnosis, I know you work with them all the time, and they're trying to figure all of this out, and if you build a quote unquote protocol for themselves, and they do want to get into the integrative approach and all that. I mean, do you have any kind of go-to resources or just easy tips and tricks, anything like that?
First, I would encourage them to go to www.maxloveproject.org, and then they can scroll down, and we have family support services. So we have our educational materials there. They can sign up to get into our private online support group. They can sign up for a dietetic consultation. So that would be one place to start. But I also, we tell this to parents, and Audra said this before, take a deep breath. This is not a sprint. This is a marathon. You are in this, God willing, you're in this for the next 50 years, right? I mean, if you're lucky, you are going to be in this when your child is 40 years old and dealing with health problems because of all of the treatments. Or your child's going to be thriving and you're going to be helping them, continue to exercise and get good sleep and manage their stress and, all that stuff. So I think that is the most important thing, because we do get a lot of parents who are like, we want to change everything. We're going to go full in. And what we've seen, for ourselves included, is that if you bite off more than you can chew, you're going to stop whatever change you did because you said, well, that's too much. And then you're going to be much less likely to go back to that change. You're going to say, oh, well, we tried the diet thing and that didn't work. And so
like the science of habit change, right? Lifestyle change is very much like that, the taking on one thing at a time. Can I add to that? Mm-hmm. The other thing that there are two initial things with parents that I feel like is really important. The first is to give yourself grace. I think very often when you have a parent that comes to us looking to make extensive lifestyle change and to do everything at once, they're piling the pressure on even higher, on top of themselves, and to not make the perfect the enemy of the good. There's no such thing as perfect, but there's a lot of good, and you're going to have to find out what's good for you. And what is great for this other family over here may not work for you, and that's okay. You've got to find your own thrive, right? You've got to find what works for you, and it's very often going to be with incremental change. Along with that comes mindset shift. Like, you may want to jump into making a big dietary lifestyle change. But if you are of the mindset that I'm going to deprive my child by doing this, I don't know how I'm going to do that because it's deprivation. It's going to be really challenging to make that shift, right? You've got that mindset challenge there. But if you can flip the script to I'm going to provide for my child by making these family changes, then that's a mindset shift that has to happen before anything else changes. You know, we really can't deploy any sort of lifestyle medicine intervention until we move into the space of provision through health, right? And wellness. So that's like first thing before we even get to any advisement in any other way. And then we have our Be Super Action Plan, and the focus is on, it's a really holistic approach on some basic things like sleep. It wasn't until this journey that I really valued anything about sleep. I had no idea how important sleep is therapeutically. And that's a really important part of our Be Super Action Plan that we have on our website. It's really the foundational part of what we do. Obviously, food is a huge part of it, but you know, mindfulness is a huge part of it as well. Having a community around you, like really, really developing that close support network is a really therapeutic part of going through this. So we do have a Be Super Action Plan, and that has given way to what I hope Justin will describe now with our Ohana Project, because when we talk about giving advice on this, which we never give medical advice, but we talk about, you know, providing guidance to families, it's going to be really wonderful as we have this study underway to say what we found was, and let me have Justin talk about that. Ohana.
Yeah, I was, but before we leave the prescription thing, because I know, you know, for parents who are going to listen to this is something that they want to hear, you know, that like, okay, well, what are the things that we should do? So, and we can segue in, but, one of the other things that we encourage parents to think about is how so it was really helpful to us, and we find that it continues to be really helpful to think about two domains for your kid. On the one hand, you have the oncologists and the doctors and the nurses who have been trained and are experts in what they do. And you give to them what is under their domain. And then you, as the parent, are the one who has to go home and then feed your kid, put them to bed, supervise their physical activity, supervise their social support and social relationships, their stress. And so to think about all of the things that are fully within your control as a parent, and then start to think about, and this is, I guess, where we will get into the Ohana Project, how there are all of these domains that are fully within our control that have been shown through very good peer-reviewed science to have effects on cancer. And so even something like social support. We now, over the last 20 years, there's been this growth in scientific research showing that social relationships, that positive, supportive social relationships, decrease a lot of chemicals in the body that can promote cancer growth, and it increases other biochemicals that can decrease inflammation and that are essentially anti-cancer. We can see it in the blood work now, right? So when we set aside time to make sure that our kids are going to play with their friends and have a really healthy social life, that's not just to put a smile on their face. We're actually doing something that's anti-cancer. Yeah. So one of the things that we continue to push is our Be Super Action Plan, because it's these 7 different parts of your life that you can chip away at. We're not asking for any big changes, just small things. I mean, if it's, you know, before bed, we have a partnership with this mindfulness meditation app called Headspace. It's fantastic. And they have a kids thing on it. So before bed, just to do a 2 or 3 minute kids mindful meditation just to ease into sleep. It doesn't have to be a major overhaul. It can just be small things. And then once you get those small things down and they just become a part of your life, now you can begin to go on to some, bigger things.
Can I add to that? I think in some ways, because our medical system is so big, everything seems to be so big, technological, treatment is big and invasive that, and I think in our society, we often don't value the power of the smaller things that we don't attend to in our daily lives. And these are the smaller things that have led to the growth of a society where we are more sick than we've ever been, right? And so to learn that sleep really matters, that mindfulness piece before, bedtime really matters, or that routine matters, and the things that, your cancer kid, you're going to say, well, this is my kid whose life is threatened. I just want to make them happy, right? Of course, we want to make them happy with amazing quality of life and provide for lifelong thrivership, whatever those days are. Even in a terminal case, we work with so many terminal kids, DIPG, other really, really devastating diagnoses. And it's so powerful to see that when you focus on that quality of life, which isn't always going to be fun, right? There's going to be less cupcakes, there's going to be less, late night parties. And
the cupcakes will be grain-free.
Yeah. There's something really powerful about going back to this. And we might say, well, it's not working. You probably hear this with things in alternative medicine. Well, it's not working because it's not as fast. It's not fast medicine. It's slow medicine. Health is slower. But to start the investment ASAP with the things that you can start with ASAP. And it's going to be different for everyone. For us, it was a couple of things we started with and we grew it. So I think that that's a good point. It's going to be incremental. It's not going to feel as wow, right. But it's going to be powerful over time.
One last thing on this is that a lot of the individual actions and habits that are good to develop in regard to the Be Super Action Plan are going to not be particularly fun immediately for your child, perhaps. So it's something like no more Twinkies, or early bedtime. We're not going to stay up late. We're going to work on bedtime. And the evidence actually shows there's good scientific evidence that suggests that childhood cancer parents are less likely to be strict on their kids because they feel a sense of guilt. They feel a sense that, I just want my kid to be happy. I'm so sorry. Or, a sense that like there's something that I did to bring this on and I just want my kid to be happy. And so one thing that we also encourage parents to develop and that we've had to work to develop is a long view of saying, you know what, this kid is going to grow up to be an adult, and we want to have them be a responsible, kind, considerate, healthy, thriving, strong adult. And so there are all these things that we need to do now to ensure this, and that their immediate happiness is less important than their long-term happiness. And that's just basic parenting advice. But for childhood cancer parents, I think it's really something that we need to hear, because it's so easy to say, oh my God, this is a terrible thing. And it is a terrible thing. But to take the long view, say, you know what? We are going to make it, and you are going to grow up to be an adult, and I'm not going to let you be a snotty, ungrateful, self-centered adult, and we're going to work on these things.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll just be really quick about the Ohana Project. So what we've decided to do is try to get all of the different programs that we've developed over the years and to condense them into a 12-week program. And so we're like right on the verge of getting approval with Chalk Hospital to begin to study this 12-week program with Chalk. So we're going to have families will enter into the program, be sorted into small groups with other families whose children have the same diagnosis. And so they're going to be in a small social support group. They're going to also receive weekly traditional Chinese medicine, acupuncture, therapeutic massage, and other modalities. And they're going to receive weekly health behavior education on the Be Super Action Plan. And so every week we're going to hold a class either on sleep or a cooking class or physical activity, stress management, social support, positive growth mindset, and then a non-toxic home as well in regard to cleaning products and all that. So those are the 7 things. And so we're going to have health education classes every week. And then the support groups will be online, and they'll be supported by a MaxLove Project registered dietitian and a parent peer health coach who has already been through it. For this first cohort, it's going to be me and another counselor, but after that, it's going to be parents who've actually been through the 12-week program. So it's a social support-based program that incorporates traditional Chinese medicine to deal with fatigue and nausea and pain, and also it's a health behavior change program, so that at the end of the 12 weeks, parents now have all of the tools that they need, and they've already started to practice these within a supportive group, so that then they can launch out of that and start to make these changes. The small groups then after the 12-week program will stay together. And so these parents will continue to provide each other social support for as long as the group wants to maintain.
Did you talk about the personalized dietetics and the counseling support group? Yeah, so there's many facets to it. It's a multimodal integrative medicine study that is formally approved by Children's Hospital of Orange County. We are going to be deploying this study in our new office space that is co-located with the traditional Chinese medicine specialists that we work with. So it's actually an integrative medicine medical office. And we have the space set up to be able to deploy the study. So I'm going to publish our findings, and we're going to run through cohorts. We're starting with brain tumors. We're going to do leukemia. Then we're going to do other solid tumors and kind of move through a couple of different cohorts. And we're going to be publishing our findings, and we're going to be taking that information on the road. And the goal is to push the needle in terms of changing standard of care. We're really looking at how to then work with hospitals, work with insurance providers to figure out how to expand standard of care to include integrative medicine. And so this is our provision of that evidence base, if you will, for this integrated protocol, but also providing direct care to these families here locally. The goal, though, is to scale up the learning so that everyone else benefits as well.
That is that's incredible. I've always wished that some sort of study like that would come about, and it sounds like you guys are actually doing it. What is the what's the timeline on the initial, when do you hope to publish your findings?
Well, so we hope to have this first cohort done by the end of December. And so then we'll have to do the analysis and write up and then, go through the publication process. So we hope within a year we will be able to see it in the works of being published. But even more than that, I think so we also have plans to do several more cohorts after this. We can just take the unpublished findings and begin to present these at conferences, and then really work to get these in every children's hospital. So we see this as eventually a necessary part of every kid's standard of care, that they need to immediately start to think about quality of life and reducing risks throughout the entire lifetime. And it starts on day one.
One of the interesting things about this is that we're a part of a pediatric hospital innovation network, and we're parent members actually with our hospital. And it's so powerful to see the amazing work of these hospitals to change what they do and to innovate care and to improve things. It's really pretty inspiring. And so we're bringing this forward as innovative. Yes, some of these modalities are well over 3,000 years old, if not more, but it's innovative to integrate it into standard of care. And it's a powerful conversation, because instead of saying, we're so mad at you guys, you should be doing this all along, we're saying, gosh, so innovative. It would be so innovative if we would. What a wonderful change to bring to care in our system. What an incredible thing for everyone involved, right? And speaking of really working the space of opportunity. And when you talk in the nonprofit sector about really kind of staying in your lane, I think our lane is pretty unique because we are in the space where this is what we're focused on. We're focused on changing standard of care. And there are other amazing organizations that are focused on bringing information about alternative medicine or bringing information about a particular modality or whatever to parents directly, which is providing impact to parents that they need today. And we're really focused on working with our parent community to impact that change in pediatric healthcare. That's just what we're passionate about doing. That's what we feel like we're in many ways needed to do with our experience and expertise now.
Wow. That's well, I'm definitely want to get you guys back on to hear about, how that went sooner than you published the studies, because I'm already dying to know.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Absolutely.
Couple more questions just before we wrap up. A couple random ones I wanted to make sure to get to you guys with. And we already kind of touched on it, but for us, we were almost lucky in the sense that Ryder had never eaten a piece of food before before the diagnosis, and so this is literally all he knows is healthy stuff, and it's not. Yeah, and it's you can't say it's nothing's easy, but we did not have to go through the challenge of completely reorienting his diet that a lot of parents that we work with have to do. I know there's no easy answer, but just on the diet specifically, are there any things that you find that at least move the needle in terms of trying to get these kids to understand why it's important and why they need to change?
Yeah. So the first thing we tell families is that, before Max was diagnosed, we ate standard American diet, Cheez-Its,
squeezy fruit things. And I went to culinary school. We cooked a ton at home.
Microwave stuff on a busy night, So
you don't learn about nutrition in culinary school, by the way, just like in medical school. Like you have one class.
So what I love to say, this is the truth, that we started out from really square one, and we wouldn't. Even though it took us a little while to even discover the ketogenic diet, we would not have been able to do the ketogenic diet any sooner than 2 years after Max was diagnosed. And that's when we did it. It took us 2 years of slow dietary change. The first thing we did, sugar was gone. But that didn't mean that we still had juice and rice and potatoes. And so all high carb stuff, but we just took out the sugar. And that's where we started. And so what we encourage for families is start wherever you can. So if it means you're saying, okay, no Twinkies during the week. I mean, if you guys eat Twinkies every day, let's just say no Twinkies during the week. You have to have them on the weekend. That has to become a rule and just the way that life is. And, it might take a few months. And when your family feels cool with that, then it's like, okay, no Twinkies even on the weekend and no Twinkies at all, right? So you need to – every family has their own starting point. And find where that is and start to make small changes and only make changes that you can stick with for the rest of your life. I don't believe in the unless you're doing like a hardcore ketogenic diet during radiation. But when it comes to fierce foods, I believe that this is a lifelong thing. It can't be just hardcore for a bit.
I even think that's like too much pressure. So I don't totally agree. I mean, I think just make the change if you can do your whole life. It's like, oh, gosh, I don't know if I can do that my whole life. I think it's make the change you can make and sustain, right? Just make the change you can make and sustain. And we do have a little things, can be easier for some than others, right? Depending on your cultural history and background. I'm from an Italian family. They show love through abundant amounts of pasta and bread and all kinds of stuff. And he comes from like a very puritanical, like Midwest family. That,
casseroles, you know.
Yeah, like, you know, so the food environment was different, right? So you have to, you know, acknowledge that all that's happening. So when we get in with the family, part of it is like looking in that reflective space, or not just where are you, and really not just to focus on the child, it's the focus on the whole family, because it's the whole family that's going to be diving into the lifestyle change. And that needs to be acknowledged, that everyone needs to be, you know, brought together to say, gotta do this for our overall well-being together. And yes, it's important to Ryder, it's important to Max, it's important to all these kids, you know, individually, but it's actually important to all of us. And what we learned going through this is that actually going in the space with Max, I feel like saved my life personally in so many ways. You know, I was headed down a path I didn't even understand metabolically. It wasn't until this lifestyle change that I feel like I was able to uncover some of my own health issues, you know, thanks to him. I do think that there is a space for palate cleansing, and I'd like to figure that out with typical families. It's such a revelation when you actually come off of the standard American diet,
hyper palatable Doritos, and
when you can kind of come off of that with a space to come back around to see how powerful whole foods are, how powerfully delicious whole foods are. It's a revelation. So we meet families where they are. We work on that incremental approach. But for those that are really able to make a palate shift, really, in switching up from a more processed food approach to a whole foods based diet, it can be a really powerful thing for the whole family, because all of a sudden the kids are like, I love seaweed. And it's, you know, things that for years and years and years have been tough. We've seen it more difficult sometimes with teenagers than with young kids. The conversations are different. So that has to be acknowledged too. It depends on the amount of siblings, depends on the family composition, the cultural heritage. I mean, some of the families have the easiest time are families in our community here in Santa Ana, California, who had grandma living at home, who's been making homemade menudo for them anyway, and they love avocado anyway, and they love eggs anyway, and it's like, well, remove the tortilla.
You got it.
Grandma makes great food. It's easier than maybe the high socioeconomic status family living in a planned community that's been living off of boxed food for the whole time. And the change and shift there somewhat is a mindset shift, because, well, my older kid's going to complain and my younger kid's going to be really mad at the cancer kid because they're changing our whole lifestyle. It's like, well, you almost need a counselor to intervene and come in with a family and be like, okay, we're in this together. How do we do this together?
But
you know,
another, in that dynamic, what we've seen with a lot of families, this is very, very common, is that the dad is not helpful in dietary changes.
Ooh.
Dads.
Is this another podcast?
This is another podcast.
Conversation.
We're going to have to just talk about dads at some point, but dads, I mean, we've seen it enough times where the dad doesn't want to do the dietary changes, and
have you seen this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my message is, dads, man up.
Exactly. Yeah.
Dietary changes for your health and for your child's health.
And for most of these dads, I mean, you're talking about a massively amazing physical turnaround that will give you your life back. You know, if you follow your child, you know, through this course, really, you know. It can be, and the dads we know who have done it with our kids, it's amazing. You know, they feel like I've gotten 10 years back. Exactly.
They lose a bunch of weight, they gain a bunch of muscle, they feel great, and it's like, dude, why, you know, every dad should want to do this, you know, but
coming up against the power of the standard American diet and lifestyle is you're legitimately dealing with addiction. It's really hard, really, really hard. It is more powerful than heroin. You know what I mean? You're dealing with some massive challenges. And so, I mean, these are the biggest questions of our time, right? I mean, these are the biggest public health questions of our time. Mm-hmm. And there is so much investment being made right now, but our medical system doesn't know what to do. Our hospital has told us we do not know what to do about childhood type 2 diabetes and obesity. We don't know what to do. We have no intervention. Nothing.
Yeah.
So we're definitely up against it. That's that's what most families are facing in some shape or form. And so to come forward with a lifestyle change for anyone is one thing, but then you just received a really difficult diagnosis that you can't even process. How do we make that shift? More of a question than
yeah, no. And speaking of the big questions, I hate to open up one more can of worms, but I just, I've been interviewing all these people that know all this stuff about adult cancer. So now, I got to get as much as I can out of you guys. Do you, I know you must put a good deal of thought into the cause of childhood cancer. Do you have any thoughts on, when I hear about all this, just alternative cancer information in general, and you start hearing about epigenetics and, people damage their body for 20, 30 years and, smoking a pack of cigarettes a day and then their genes change and so on and so forth. It's like, yeah, I get that, it's, they got cancer because of that, but, my child was born with cancer, or, people's childs got cancer when they were 2 or 3 or, 8 or 9 or whatever. Do you have any thoughts on what accelerated that process for these kids?
Well, I mean, it could very well be damage to me. It could very well be my grandfather with an environmental asbestos poisoning, combined with the fact that I grew up on the Hudson River with spring water that was completely infested with pesticides. It could very well be the case.
Combined with the fact that you were pregnant with Max and we lived right on the 405 in Los Angeles. And so,
you take all of these things together, and we think that Max was probably very much born with this mutation, and things progressed over his life. Combined with that, we may have had a favorable environment for that when he was born. We didn't reverse it at some point. I mean, who knows if it was a switch at one point or another. I mean, we really just don't know. But one of the things,
so many things go wrong when cancer occurs.
Yeah.
Because it's not just a dysregulated cell, but it's a dysregulated immune system as well. Because we have plenty of dysregulated cells, and our immune system takes care of them, right? So there are so many things that go wrong, and so pinpointing exactly, it's difficult.
One thing that I think has helped me tremendously as a mother of this child going through this is I took the part where I blamed myself day one when we were in the ICU, and I put that in a box and I burned it. I was like, cancer is a disease state, but that, we have found in early primitive life forms, right? And so it's definitely not unique to humans and not unique to our time at all. Reading The Emperor of All Maladies was a really amazing book. I don't know if you've read that, but when you start to look at the history of cancer and you start to look at the organisms that share this challenge with us, I think even though we use the fight narrative with Max because it resonates with him, we're looking at, you spoke of dysregulation, we're looking at a systemic issue in that occurs not just in humanity, but all over. So the animal kingdom, if you will. So what do we do with that? And we tend to focus on the space of empowerment. What do we do now? How do we face this? And that gets to our offline conversation about a cure. For us, it was focusing on changing that environment. Some of it's the microenvironment. Some of it is the environment, around us. Trying to minimize toxins, trying to utilize, glass containers and, things like that. I think most cancer parents have gone in those directions, right? You're looking at how to minimize the environment that might tip something off, even though we can't control all of that, but also letting go that we can't control all of this, that we find high incidence rates in most every place in the developed world. And we start to think,
but
the less
we
developed
also
world
know,
less.
We know from epidemiology that immigrants to the U.S. That the second generation has a higher cancer rate than the first. So there's something.
Women coming from Japan have a significantly higher cancer rate when they're born in Japan, but come here in that lifetime, have a significantly higher cancer rate than if they were to remain in Japan.
And then their kids have a higher rate as well. And so I often like to say that we live in a pathogenic society. There are so many aspects of the way we live that are disease promoting. And so the best that we can do is try to chip away at it. So everything from sleep, there are amazingly good studies that show dysregulated sleep, short sleep, disrupted sleep, that these affect all sorts of systems in our body. They affect gene expression. So the fact that we live in a society where it's perfectly normal to bathe ourselves in artificial light until 11 o'clock at night, and then have trouble going to sleep, and then having to wake up at 5:30 in the morning to go to work, like that's a normal thing. That is cancer causing in itself. And so we have, the sleep, and then of course emotional, psychological stress. We know absolutely that
challenges with connection, with deep personal connection, in our society.
Right.
All of these things, right?
And then we've already talked about the food, and
so then what can we do? That's where MaxLove Project comes in, and the kind of our philosophy has been, okay, fine, to the, Epstein-Barr causing my son's brain tumor or whatever it may be, all these plausible, opportunities. Well, it is what it is right now. So what can we do to provide the best quality of life, mitigate the risks, change the odds for him and then every other kid faced with this? And maybe as we change the odds for them in their preventive long-term care, maybe we could be changing the odds for all of us in all of our preventive long-term care, to some degree as we're making these lifestyle changes. But the last thing that resonates with me most in this journey is the complete shift that happens now that I feel like is the key, at least in my life, is living with tremendous gratitude every single day. Now there's this opportunity that I just tried to recognize before, but now it's like an innate in beautiful moments of every day, just being grateful for this beauty that we have around us and this ability to connect and to be a part of an amazing community, to have an incredible family, and things like, financial challenges and all the daily, things sort of like float away because there's something so powerful about living in the space of gratitude and really choosing joy. And I think, I don't know if there's a stronger tool in fighting cancer than that.
No, probably not. I'm glad you mentioned the artificial light, by the way. It's Ryder knows. Ryder knows when the sun goes down, the red lights come on. We got
That's right. Justin is usually walking behind anyone.
I'm just
that lights are.
Yeah. I'm the light Nazi around here too.
Yeah. Wouldn't that be an amazing change to the hospital setting for there to be circadian driven light bulbs?
Yeah.
Yeah, instead of the blinding white 24/7.
Right.
Yeah. It was a while back now, but I was glad you guys mentioned. Actually, that was new to me. So I use Headspace, and Ryder has a little, mindfulness routine that he does before bed. But what's that?
What's his bedtime routine?
Oh, so so it was actually kind of recent. I went to this, where was I? Best Answer for Cancer conference, and was talking to a lady there, and she was big on all that kind of stuff. And she said, one thing she said was, if you're just really down, or you're having a really bad day or whatever, you just put your hand on your forehead and you take 3 deep breaths, and you say, on the third breath, I am going to be blank, whatever it is, I'm going to have a new wave of great energy, or whatever it is, whatever you want to change, you just, you decide that on the third breath that change is going to happen. And I think one night after I got home from that, Ryder was being a little punk about going to sleep, and Teddy had it, and she said, you go in there and see what you can do. And so I did the 3 breaths thing. And, I something like, I'm just going to be relaxed and ready to go to bed and get a great sleep and restorative and blah, 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 blah. And he did it. And, we never heard a peep out of him the rest of the night.
Awesome.
And now he insists on doing his 3 breaths. He won't go to bed without it. And yeah, it's pretty funny.
That's a great trick. We are going to use that. I hope you don't mind.
Please do.
No, spread it far and wide, right?
Yeah.
That's so cool. That sounds like it'd be an amazingly useful strategy, in the hospital. And it speaks to our need also for routine. We found that, our kids really need the boundary and the routines, and Max is dependent on it going through his treatment significantly as well. And so that lifestyle medicine can be that routine, like what you're doing with this amazing bedtime mindfulness routine. It's awesome.
So a couple questions I wrap everything up with everyone that comes on the show, and I usually prepare people for them, and I did not with you guys, but I'm sure you'll make it through.
Yeah.
If you had to boil everything you knew down into 3 golden rules, and those rules would be helping you stay healthy and disease-free, or become healthy and disease-free, or you and your kid, I guess you should say, in this case, what would those rules be?
That's probably different for each of us. They're probably different for everybody, right? If
Well,
we go with
the one thing that
generalize.
I think we both
Can we generalize?
We both would say, because it's not a sprint, it's a marathon.
Give
So
yourself
that would
grace.
be that would be one.
Be generous toward yourself. Be generous yet challenging at the same time. Challenge yourself, but also be generous and kind to yourself.
That thriving is a choice, and that that the cancer diagnosis and the cancer journey, I think, can be very disempowering. And we've talked a little bit about the ways that it can be very disempowering. But long-term thriving is a choice, and not now. Audra will have a problem with this because she knows
choice.
What?
I just said that. I said it's a choice.
Because even for families we know who lost their child, they still have it. They still have the choice to thrive as a family, and then also thriving is a matter of quality of life in the moment. How are you going to deal with the challenges that are in front of you?
See Sheryl Sandberg's option B for citation on the bereavement and the concept of post-traumatic growth. I think that it's important to put that into context, what you mean by that you can thrive. And one of my favorite quotes is Viktor Frankl, who if anyone looks him up, was an amazing man who was subjected to a torture in a Nazi death camp. And what he left with was the last really enduring human freedom is our freedom to choose how we respond to any given situation. And so when you can't change the situation, the next step is to change yourself. And that's where this comes, for me anyway, that proactivity when it comes to choice. Yes, my son is a victim of cancer at that moment of diagnosis, but after that, how we choose to move forward is not in the space of victimization, but in the space of proactivity. That to me is a key to thriving. Absolutely. I thrive when I proactively, in many ways take responsibility for how I assess how I'm going to face adversity and the choices I make from that.
So we've done 2.
Is that 2?
Do you have a third?
I'm sure you do. Would you like to?
Well, I would have something around narrative about.
That relates to the others, but
it relates to the others, but as much as you can, assess the overall story or narrative that you have around what has happened to your child and happened to you, and recraft your narrative or story in such a way that you and your child are the heroes, and that you and your child are the primary movers. You are not the ones that things are happening to, but you are the ones that are actively engaging. And so these stories can take on any form, and they can be molded into different contexts. But I think it's really important that the story has your family, you and your partner and your child as the heroes in the story.
Yeah, no, it's a really important point, because what do you do with it's not fair that this happened? It's not fair. You know,
Yeah,
it's tragic. I don't
get
know
the
if
word
there's any
fair
justice
out
in
of
this,
your
but
vocab.
no such thing. It has, and what, is where we're at. I know it sounds callous, but I know when Max was diagnosed, I mean, we wrestled with all those emotions, but when it came down to it, it was now what? Now what? And the narrative we choose is one where we're going to give our son high fives because we know his thrivership depends on our mindset. And I think that goes for any family. You're not facing cancer, you're facing something else. If you want to pursue thrivership in your life as a typical family watching this, looking to glean from the cancer journey maybe, what do you take from that? It's that profound proactivity and sharing this as a family, and really what you model for your entire family makes all the difference in the world. It's so important. So I agree with you on that narrative shift for sure. Imagine high fives over not speaking about a grave situation. The third one, I mean, I would say really acknowledging bioindividuality and individuality in things, that there's no one way, right? There's no one way, because every voice you're going to see on the internet is going to give you the one way. And it's going to be only Amazon fruit, only carrot juice, only standard of care, only da-da-da, only this diet, like go to Barnes & Noble, right? Only my diet for you, everyone, and understanding that that's just impossible, totally impossible. Anyone who's selling you a one way or the highway approach might be doing what's right for them, but there's a really good chance it may not be what's totally great for you, right? So kind of acknowledging that you may need to sort of like pick and choose and put together your own protocol, and honoring your your gut on that is really important, because I think you're going to, as long as you're still pushing forward progress over perfection and choosing your way, once you learn to listen to yourself, you're the only one who knows yourself that well, to be able to identify your space of thrivership.
So no one's ever done it before, but you guys kind of managed to answer my next question with your 3 golden rules. So that's congratulations. Yeah, but I'm sure you
get a widget for our website.
Yeah. I'm sure you won't have trouble coming up with something else. Just if you'd like to take us out with any sort of final thought or sentiment for families going through a cancer diagnosis right now, what would that be?
Oh man.
I would go, because I'm just kind of feeling that last thing that we talked about. Yeah.
So when Max was diagnosed, it took me 2 weeks to ask the medical team if he had cancer. 2 weeks. And the response was, yeah. I couldn't acknowledge it. It's like brain tumor, but it's not cancer, whatever it may be, mass even, it was just I could not go there. And someone described to me, don't feel guilty about that. Denial is such an important coping skill. It's turned out to be that almost 6 years later, just now in the 5th year of the diagnosis, I have been in the process of coming to terms with the fact that Max's prognosis wasn't good. I had formulated a vision that his prognosis was good. In fact, that he's better off than most other kids. And it was how I coped psychologically with what we were going through. And it's okay. That's what I needed to do. I remember a friend of ours, their son had DIPG. And they said, after their son had died, they said, I just couldn't believe it. When we first met Max, we just thought, there's no way he's going to make it. He's not doing good. He's not going to make it. I just felt so sorry for you. Right? This is a family with a child with a terminal brain cancer diagnosis, which we weren't given a terminal diagnosis. We were just given an unknown. We don't know what we can do. And that was just shocking to me. And coming now almost 6 years of processing, it's okay. It's going to take time. Things are going to unfold. And again, give yourself grace along the way, because there is nothing more shocking than being thrown into the space of parenting or caregiving like this. It is beyond anything we feel like we're equipped for in our perfection-driven lives as parents. We're worried about preschools and we're worried about the quality of this, that, and the other. And then all of a sudden, boom, we're told your kid's life is deeply threatened. We have to give ourselves grace in that process of how we address it. So even though we talk about like the empowering proactivity stuff, which I think we can all work on that muscle of proactivity and resilience along the way, as you have a hard time processing, like it's okay. The other thing that's totally okay to do is to seek help. I think that may be hard for a lot of us along the way to think we should just know how to do this. Well, how do we know how to do this? Nobody just knows how to do this. So seeking any type of psychological support as well, I think can be super, super helpful. We'd love for that to be provided actually a little bit more. Imagine if you end up in the hospital and you're in care along with your child. That would be amazing someday. So that's what I leave with.
Awesome. It's been mentioned a couple times, but one more time, where would you point everyone to learn about all things MaxLove Project and take advantage of the resources you have to offer?
So not only www.maxloveproject.org, but also you can find us on Facebook. And then
at MaxLove Project, the same thing. And then also
email info.
Yeah, info at maxloveproject.org, and we'll get right back to you. And we're also, on Instagram, and we're a very small, growing organization, but as you can tell, we've got a lot of passion and willpower. So we look forward to connecting with, everyone who'd like to connect with us.
Audra and Justin Wilford, stick around for a second after I stop recording, but thank you so much for coming on. It's been great.
Thank you.
Was that a great way to kick off Childhood Cancer Empowerment Month, or what? I really can't wait to see how their Ohana Project study turns out. We'll be sure to get the updates from Audra and Justin and keep you posted on what I'm quite sure are going to be some pretty incredible results. If you know someone who would benefit from this episode, please let them know about it. Of course, we love it when you share the show, but not everyone listens to podcasts and might need a little extra encouragement, so tell them to give it a listen. However you want to let people know about it, sharing what we do here really is the highest compliment you can give us and is also the most helpful thing you can do for us, not to mention those you're sharing the show with. This episode can be found at mykidcurescancer.com/maxlove-project. MaxLove, all one word, -project. And of course, that's where you can get the links to all the resources that were brought up during the conversation and a full summary of the interview, and usually where I would be writing about how the information in the conversation related to childhood cancer, but since the whole episode was literally about childhood cancer, I don't think that section will be necessary this time. Is the information in this episode and every other episode we'll put out this month worth at least 25 cents to you? Consider helping us keep going by sending $1 a month. Was it worth a little more than $1 to you? Consider helping us keep going with $5 a month. You get the idea. Bringing this information to you on a weekly basis is certainly not free in terms of time and energy or very real expenses. If you want to play a very real part in our mission of getting this information to everyone that needs it, mykidcurescancer.com/crowd sponsor is the place to do that, and crowd sponsor is all one word. Lord willing, we'll see you next week with the always entertaining and extremely informative Dr. Robert Morse, where just to keep you on your toes after this conversation mentioning the ketogenic diet and integrative and complementary approaches to cancer, in this episode we're going to be talking about a high fruit diet and all natural healing, which just as a heads up can also be listened to in the context of consideration of the best way to repair and thrive post-conventional treatment as well. Music was provided by the Fat Rat and the Tasty Network, and all editing was done by the best wife and mother in the world, Teddy Sternagel. If your family is going through cancer right now, above all else, just keep going. That's all for me. This is Ryan Sternagel wishing you and yours God's blessings and Godspeed.